Hello, everyone, and welcome to this very special episode of Book Solid. I'm James. I'm your host.
I'm your host, Kathleen.
And I'm your new host, Kat.
And we've got a very special guest with us today for this very special episode.
Hi, I'm Sam Connell, and I was a previous member of this podcast, so it's a lovely return.
Welcome back.
Thank you.
So in this episode, we are just going to talk about books that we have enjoyed this summer, as well as books that we are looking forward to reading in the fall. So Kathleen, would you like to get us started with one of your books that you've read this summer that you really enjoyed?
I would. The first book I wanted to talk about today is Ducks by Kate Beaton, which is a graphic memoir about her time in the oil fields of Alberta. And I know that does not sound exciting, but this book is harrowing and amazing and wild, and it was by far the most affecting, most memorable thing that I read this summer. It will traumatize you, but in the best possible way.
What kind of trauma?
So Sam, I know
I've been through some trauma with you, and I need to know what kind.
For our listeners of our previous seasons of Book Solid, you might remember that Sam and I love trauma. And in fact, many of the books that we chose were traumatizing in unique and interesting ways. So in this one, Kate basically goes off to these oil fields to pay off her student loans. If you work there for 2 years, you can make a ton of money, and you're basically set if you go through terrible things. I imagine she thinks it's going to go better than it does, but the cost of this journey is pretty intense. So we see the environmental impact on the natural landscape, and then what's happening to Kate on a personal level, just the human cost of what happens when you live in a place where you're kind of outside of society and everyone's sort of maybe not adhering to the rules that they would normally adhere to. So that kind of trauma, Sam.
Okay, all right.
I actually picked this up on Kathleen's recommendation this summer and had to read it in a couple sittings because of the trauma. It's also the trauma of being a woman, of like 3 women in a field dominated by men who are separated from their community and feel entitled to your time and to harass you at basically every corner. One of the things that really stuck with me is how Kate is haunted by this idea that like her father could have become like one of these men. What are they like at home? Is it the situation that makes them so capable of violence and harassment, or is it who they actually are? This book was amazing, and I only didn't put it on my list because Kathleen put it on hers first.
Okay, so I think I might be up. It's a good, enriching trauma. It's not like I'll be on the floor panicking because you have said to me murder is your comfort food.
It's different from that, but it may have you on the floor.
Oh.
There's so much to think about. It's very literary, even though it is this memoir. The way it's structured, she really puts you in that moment, in who she is at that time. So it's not even really retrospective so much as you're kind of learning and discovering what's happening as she is. So, you're right there with her as like a 22-year-old. This harrowing journey is kind of unfolding before you as well. So it's very visceral.
Yeah. All right, I think I'm in. With trepidation, but I'm in.
All right.
Okay, so I have to ask, did all 3 of you read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow?
Yes.
No.
I did not.
Oh, okay, good. So I can try to sell you on this. So I read Tomorrow and Tomorrow and Tomorrow by Gabrielle Zevin early this summer when I wanted something lighter, and I think my solution for that was to listen to the book, and the audio book is excellent. It was the kind of experience I had where it started where I just needed something to do on long car rides. Before you know it, I was on the treadmill, in the kitchen, I was in bed, like panicking that I might fall asleep and miss something. I enjoyed it so thoroughly. So the book is about, I think in a word, friendship, but it follows a story of Sam Mazer and Sadie Green. They're these brilliant kids, and the story introduces them to us when they run into each other in a Boston subway station. They're students at Harvard and MIT, and the book brings you through decades of their relationship. Sadie was a good friend of Sam's when he was in the hospital recovering from a horrific accident that affects his life in so many ways when he was a young child. And so it follows their story, and then it introduces a third friend who is also really neat. And it's almost a 3-way friendship. And what I love about the book is that it talks about the gaming industry. And so they basically decide to build a game together, which every time I explain that to someone and try to book talk this story, people sort of gloss over there. It's like, oh gosh, no, I don't want to read, a gaming book. But I'm not a gaming person. I've never really been into gaming, but I loved this book. I think what Gabrielle Zevin does so well is relationships. So it's a strong recommend from me.
This is a great book. We actually read it. The library has a new book group that we've actually created, the Book Talk book group, covering books that are popular on social media right now. And Tomorrow is hitting really big. And we actually covered this, so it was an incredible talk. Everyone seemed to really love it, and having read it again recently for that, great story.
I'm a huge fan of gaming, and I actually love hearing developers talk about video games, because the more you learn about it, the more you're like, humans are amazing that we can make this at all. And I'm really fascinated by the ways in which artist friendship can define a work. So you've just bumped it to the top of my list, especially as an audiobook.
Delighted to hear that.
I really struggled to pick 3 books because I've read a lot of good books this summer, but I think the one that I want to recommend, because I think I wanted to reach a wider audience, is How Far the Light Reaches, a memoir in 10 sea creatures by Sabrina Imbler. This is, as the title suggests, literally every chapter takes a different sea creature, and Imbler uses that as an avenue to explore a different aspect of their life. So an early chapter covers how mother octopuses will starve themselves for their children, become their children's first meal, and they use that as a way to discuss their own relationship with their body and their disordered eating as they came of age, and their mother's relationship with disordered eating, and how they both would disparage their bodies to each other, in front of each other, and the way that that affected their bond. This is a really unique book. I've never read anything like it. I would say there's only one chapter where the animal metaphor felt, frankly, just a little stretched. But for 10 chapters on such diverse topics, I really found this to be a very breathtaking work. My favorite chapter was about ecosystems that emerge around hydrothermal vents at the bottom of the ocean.
Very cool.
Wow.
And they used this to discuss moving to Seattle and having no community until they found this little dive bar, like a pop-up queer bar that would just show up in different bars around the city different nights. And it only lasted one summer and then was gone, much like these ecosystems, because the hydrothermal vents don't last that long. And the ways that they explored community and bodies through animal life was just fascinating to me. Really masterfully done.
That sounds cool. That sounds great.
That sounds really interesting, and a little bit of foreshadowing, but I think I'm particularly interested in it because of what we're doing for our first book of next season, which we will discuss at the end of this.
All right. One of the books that I really loved this summer, probably the one I liked the most, was A Stranger in Alondria by Sofia Samatar, which is a fantasy book about a man named Jevik, who's a young man from an island raised in kind of the shadow of this vast, powerful nation called Alondria, and becomes infatuated with its culture, especially its tradition of reading and learning. And when eventually he goes and travels there, first of all, he immediately falls in love with this beautiful port city that's full of history and everything, and he completely falls for it. But he also becomes possessed, or maybe he goes insane. People are kind of differing about what happens to him, but whatever happens to him throws him into a situation where he is forced to reckon with political turmoil and strife within this country and be used as kind of a pawn that takes him into all sorts of experiences, from being like a traveling prophet to being at the highest heights of society and being around that kind of area. Fascinating book, incredible use of language, so beautiful. The book has this obsession with reading and the idea of histories and culture and all of these really meaningful things about society. And it's all in the context of this fantasy book, but I couldn't stop reading it. I was completely enthralled with this. I was blown away.
How long is the book?
It's not very long.
No, I want to say it's 300, 350 pages?
Yeah.
Samatar is like one of my immediate buy authors whenever I see something new that she's coming out with. I was introduced through her work through A Stranger in Alondria. And her newest book is actually a memoir called The White Mosque, which is about a group of German Mennonites who traveled to Uzbekistan in the 19th century because they believed that Jesus would return in Uzbekistan in the East. It is a really fascinating look. So if you're interested in beautiful writing, but you're not into fantasy, I would definitely recommend her memoir as well.
I love the specificity of that.
You know what I love about Samatar is she takes these very niche topics and she manages to weave them into this broader human tapestry. It's absolutely fascinating.
Okay, I'm going to circle it and put it on my list, but I should say, James, that you've never recommended a book to me that I liked.
Incorrect. I recommended one book to you that you liked.
Wait a minute. One book.
One
Yes.
book.
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. It
I've
was
got
the
a
very
winning
first
streak.
time I met you.
Yeah.
So it's been downhill
Beginner's
since then.
luck.
And what book was that?
It was
V.E. Schwab's seminal classic, the...
What was it? Vicious?
no, it was
Invisible Life of
like
Addie
Addie
LaRue.
LaRue. Yes. So you're
Shout
like,
out to the podcast episode.
which we did for the podcast.
Which we did
That's
for the
right.
podcast.
That's right. So you're like what, 1 in 10?
It's a good one.
Yeah.
If it helps, Sam, I pushed this book on James.
Okay.
So it's sort of like from me by proxy. So if you hate it, you can blame me instead of James.
All right. I'm gonna, but it's not fair. If I like it, James is going to take credit for it as his.
I will not take credit for it if you like it.
All right, it's on my list.
All right, so the next book that I want to recommend is Lone Women by Victor LaValle. So this one is kind of a random premise. I was really intrigued just because of how unique it is. So it starts out the year's 1915. Adelaide Henry has this enormous steamer trunk she's taking with her. You meet her when she's basically setting her house on fire with dead bodies inside and going on a trip up north to claim land in Montana as a homesteader. And she's going to become one of these lone women, which is a real historical thing that I just learned about from this book. So it's actually historical fiction in addition to being, as you can imagine, with the steamer trunk, it's mysterious and there are tapping sounds and things coming from inside a horror book. But so she is this single black woman who moves to Montana because of this kind of like loophole in the system. All of these women are moving alone to Montana because they can all claim land if they homestead for like 3 years or so, and it's really harsh and really unforgiving environment. But there's a whole community there, and she's very resourceful. And then there's the horror stuff where you're like, what's in the trunk? What happens when it gets out of the trunk? And it's so fascinating. It's so interesting. So I definitely recommend, if you like, even if you don't like historical fiction, honestly, because I'm not a big fan. I do like horror. I think that genre element with historical fiction and the mystery of what's in the trunk makes it a really great read.
That was on my list of things to read, and it's just jumped right back onto there.
Oh, agreed. Yes, same here.
So the next book I want to recommend is Ordinary Grace. I went and saw our friends down at Elm Street Books, and they gave me this great recommendation, and I loved it. So the book is about, it's sort of this coming-of-age 13-year-old in Minnesota in this like sleepy little town with a railroad track that runs through it. And if you've ever watched the movie Stand By Me, it kind of has like notes of that. But the book starts with a troubling death, and then he says in the beginning, there was a series of deaths that summer. It is so beautifully written. The relationships, again, that always does it for me, with the main character Frank and his brother, who has a stutter, and how that affects the way they deal. And the brother sort of follows him around. And then there's sort of something to figure out. There's the police in town, and his father is the town pastor. And so it's fascinating from the point of view of the son of the pastors and how much trouble they get into, and how there's some real terrible tragedy. But for me, and I don't really love things that delves into faith, I just found such beautiful writing about belief and love and family and what we do to get through this time on earth together and celebrate. So I was blown away by it, and I really enjoyed it.
That really segues well into the book that I'm going to talk about, which is also about faith in a lot of ways. I found a lot of inspiration in Hijab Butch Blues, which is by a writer who uses the name Lamia H. And they discuss how deeply they are committed to their identity as a Muslim, and how seriously they take their faith while also being a lesbian. And the intersections of that identity and the ways in which they feel ostracized in many cases by their Muslim community and by the broader LGBTQ community, which can be extremely Islamophobic. The way that they threaded that needle and found people who understood every part of who they were and found community through their faith and through their queer identity was so inspiring to me. I really recommend it if you're looking for a memoir from a unique voice.
All right, well, my next book is Yellow Face by R.F. Kuang. You'll recognize that author's name because they wrote Babel, which is one of our darlings at this podcast.
And another podcast shout out.
So this is a book about a woman named June Hayward, who is a struggling author who can't seem to catch a break, unlike her friend Athena Liu, who is a rising star in the literary world. There is an unfortunate freak accident where June and Athena are together, and Athena winds up dying. And June, in maybe a panic, maybe something else, somehow winds up with Athena's unpublished manuscript for her next novel. And June decides that she's going to publish that novel as her own work and kind of not tell anyone else about it. And this, somewhat problematic, I think we'd all agree. It gets a little weirder when she goes to the publishers who are very interested in this. They decide, well, the book is about Chinese laborers during World War I, which was something that Athena was very interested in, that she was writing about. And as June presents this to her publisher, the publisher's like, well, maybe we should change your name to Juniper Song and have racially ambiguous author photos. And maybe you should do some outreach to certain communities that you might not actually interact with.
I've lived this.
And as this is happening, June is thinking to herself, yeah, this is all right. I'm doing okay. This is fine. And it's a book which is interesting because she keeps making these justifications to herself. And you're stuck in first person in her head as she keeps making these decisions to protect her secret, to further enhance her fame and her popularity and her fortunes. And as it keeps on going, you wonder, what won't she do to keep this a secret? And I really enjoyed it. I like being in a character's head who I don't like at all.
From what I've heard from people who work in publishing as well, like, it's a satire, but it's not far from how things actually happen.
It's pretty scathing.
You know, I think much like Hollywood, publishing loves a book about itself, right? But that doesn't mean there's not really valuable critique to be had.
Mm-hmm.
So for my last book, I wanted to recommend Cosmonites by Hannah Templer, which is just a lot of fun.
Great choice.
So, I mean, the synopsis on the book just really says it all. For this ragtag band of space gays, liberation means beating the patriarchy at its own game. Like, you don't really need anything else.
You don't need anything else after that, I'm convinced.
So the art is so colorful and vivid. You know, there's lots of fun action. It takes place in space, but there's also like this gladiatorial jousting kind of element, which I will say I'm not even super into like this neo-medieval space kind of situation normally. Like, this isn't something that I even think I would pick up based on that context. But the characters are so charming and charismatic and interesting. There are like a lot of great mysteries and a lot of cliffhangers and things like that. I loved the first volume. The second volume just came out in June, so I revisited the first volume, and then I immediately started reading the second one this summer, and it was even better than the first. I would pretty much recommend it to everyone because it's just a really great graphic novel, quick read, and a lot of fun. Good adventure.
Okay, my turn. So the last book I'm going to recommend is The Essential New York Times Cookbook by Amanda Hesser. I have been following Amanda Hesser for over 20 years. She used to write memoir type books. She wrote The Cook and the Gardener. She wrote Cooking for Mr. Latte. And I wanted to be Amanda Hesser when I grew up. She was the editor, the food editor at the New York Times, and she had all of these great articles in sight. Now, why am I recommending this as a read? Well, I have to be honest, it is the book that I most enjoyed reading this summer.
There we go.
There we go.
The backstory on this is that it came out last year. I asked my family for this book for the holidays, which of course nobody followed through on.
Oof.
So I finally, late this spring, early this summer, got a copy for myself. It probably weighs 5 pounds. And then I sat on my sofa and read it page for page, and I loved it so dearly. It's not like reading a regular cookbook. Amanda Hesser does such a great job of talking about who we were as Americans, who we were, what we ate, what we did, little things like what was that weird kale moment, and the whole decade of balsamic vinegar, and she's hilarious because when she was editing this, she's like, there are some things that we just want to pretend never happened, like aspic, right, and all of that. But she adds such wit. She's like a really good friend offering advice about what to cook and how to cook it and what's important to keep and what's important to leave behind us. It does also read like a memoir of the entire American culinary scene.
Oh my gosh. I love looking for good cookbook recommendations, and my heart just lit up as you were describing it. I'm so excited.
So good.
All right, for my last pick, I actually picked something fun because the first two I recommended were kind of heavier memoirs, and that's Witch King by Martha Wells. This is a standalone high fantasy novel. I read a lot of books by debut authors this summer, and then I picked up Witch King, and I was like, this is the hand of someone who's been writing a long time. What I loved about this book is there's not really exposition dumps. She throws you in the deep end and is like, I trust you as a reader. You're going to figure out this complex world, these politics. You will figure it out, which I personally prefer as a reader. I would rather be confused than have someone sit down and say, here's the king, and he became the king in the last war. Like, in fantasy, I don't want things explained to me that much. I also thought that the pacing of the mystery unfolded really well. I read this as an audiobook on a couple weeks worth of very long drives, and it made it bearable even in summer traffic. So, highly recommend.
Yeah, Martha Wells, great author, long time author in the fantasy science fiction scene. Incredible work. My final one is another fantasy book, surprise, surprise. It is He Who Drowned the World by Shelley Parker Chan. This is actually a sequel to She Who Became the Sun, which is the story of how a peasant girl basically rises up to be one of the main claimants for the imperial Chinese throne, which is currently being held by the Mongols. Through a series of events and her own gumption, her never quit attitude, and child murder, she's basically poised right along with a few other contenders to take that throne. And in this book, those other contenders start making their moves. And it's a very dark book, very kind of backroom court politics, along with some pretty violent military maneuvers, things like that. Lots of scheming. Some fantasy elements are present in this book a little more than in the previous one, but I really enjoyed this one. I thought it was a great ending. It was a duology, so it's only 2, so quick to get through when it comes to epic fantasy, but I loved it. Great action, great characters, very complicated characters. Really, really good read.
I read She Who Became the Sun this summer, and the child murder caught me off guard. I'm not gonna lie. The whole book, you're like, you're really ambitious. Like, are you gonna go to what it takes to take the imperial throne? Because, like, you're gonna have to do some serious war crimes. And she was like, yeah, I'm ready to do those war crimes. I'm ready to do a child murder. And she did.
She presses the war crime button.
She presses the war crime button.
Flips the switch.
And I'm really excited to see how it all goes wrong.
Oh, yeah.
I'm gonna bump that up to my list.
All right, that was every book that we read this summer that we wanted to recommend on the podcast. Next up, we're going to talk about what we want to read in the fall. Kathleen, do you want to start us up again with this?
Sure. And James, I know that you are like an advanced reading copy maniac, so you've already read this book.
I've read many of these books, I think, probably.
So the first book that I wanted to talk about was The September House by Carissa Orlando, which comes out in September. So this is about a woman determined to stay in her dream home, even after it becomes haunted and the walls start dripping blood. So she has this...
This book is incredible, I have to say.
But of course.
Listen, do you know how hard it is to buy a house in this economy?
This is why I want to read it, because I'm like, I get it.
Yeah,
and also, I love the idea that it's haunted, but only in September. So I feel like you can work through that. Like, that's not a deal breaker. So I'm excited. I mean, I'm all about spooky season, and I'm like, once it becomes fall, once it hits September, I'm like, yeah, I'm going to be reading spooky books. So this seems like the perfect spooky book for that. And I don't know what happens with Margaret yet, but I'm on her side about staying in this house.
Okay, let's see how that ends for her.
Let me tell you, if I was Margaret, I would have gotten out of the house when the kid jumped at me. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
But it's 1 month. You can stay with a friend for a month.
Yeah, exactly. Just be like, I'll see you in a month. Take your little depression moment. Have it over here. I'm going to go.
House is yours.
House is yours.
So I don't know that much about this book intentionally. And that's because one of the books I read this summer, I was holding it, and one of my friends gave me a synopsis that told me more than I wanted to know going through the book. So I actually love, like, I don't even need a lot of detail. I want to kind of experience the book pretty fresh. So the book is The River We Remember, and that's because Ordinary Grace, it's the same author. Now, Kathleen knows this very well. I do not like series. I love a good standalone book, right? Fans of Maurice Sendak.
Yes.
And so I really loved his writing so much. And what I like about it, it's the things about a series that I like, which is I enjoyed this book and so many elements about this book. But it leaves away the part, like Kat said, I don't want it to explain to me. Don't remind me what happened. Because I've forgotten for sure, right? And so I love not having to read the first 3 chapters where the author is trying to, in a really well-written literary way, remind you of all the things you've forgotten. So I feel like this solves both of those for me. And the very quick synopsis is that, so once again, this is in a small town in Minnesota, and a person is found dead, and then it's got murder, so Kathleen, you might think about it. But I think it also will have a really interesting exploration of relationships, and it has all the necessary wonderful parts, right? Publisher of a local newspaper, an aging deputy, and a crusading female lawyer. Let's go, right?
Oh yeah.
So that's it. I'm excited about it. It comes out September 5th.
Those are both great, like, spooky season starters there. We've got murder, we've got haunted houses. I'm going to take us to the real king of spooky seasons, which is family drama. And I'm going to recommend Family Lore by Elizabeth Acevedo. It just came out this month. I haven't read it yet, but I love Acevedo's YA novels. I'm not much of a young adult reader, but I really love the way that she writes about families and relationships specifically. So when I heard she was coming out with an adult novel, I was absolutely over the moon. I know that it involves one sister who can predict the day that she is going to die, and she invites all of her family over for her living wake, so that all of the family secrets can be just completely aired out, and I am here to live vicariously through someone else's family drama. So very excited for that.
We call that Thanksgiving.
Yes, basically.
Ouch. All right, so the first book that I'm really looking forward to in the fall is The Water Outlaws by S.L. Huang, which is coming out at the end of this month, actually, August 22nd. It's kind of sneaking in there. But this is a retelling or reinterpretation of The Water Margin, which is a classic Chinese tale from like the 14th century. But it's gender bent, and I have to say, the amount of good press and reviews that the other authors that I've read this year have been giving this are wild. It has gender bent characters in like an epic fantasy setting, focusing on bandits, people living on the outside of society, fighting back against tyranny, and it's supposed to be unputdownable, breakneck pace, incredible action, and it also said in the summary that it's about ungovernable gender, and I'm like, I don't know what that is, but I really want to know more.
I love that.
So, excited to get my hands on that.
That sounds good. All right, so my second book is Sure, I'll Join Your Cult by Maria Bamford.
I love that title.
So this one is this is a memoir by the comedian Maria Bamford. She's known for her stand-up, her Netflix show Lady Dynamite, and so I'm a big fan. She's super funny, and this one is like I just think the framework is really fascinating. So it's sort of about like belonging. So from everything from Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People to Suzuki violin training, Richard Simmons, and 12-step programs. Those are the things. So I'm excited to read this one. This is all the stuff that she kind of talks about in her stand-up. So I'm interested to see it in a memoir format.
Okay. My last recommendation is A Volga Tale by Gutzel Yakhina, and apologies if I'm mispronouncing that. So I have said so many times on the podcast, I try to read a book in translation at least once every year. And so this is translated from Russian. The translator is Polly Canaan, and I do actually follow certain translators. So this book is getting a lot of buzz in the international world. The premise is that the Volga is the longest river in Europe, and it sort of divides the continent. In one side you have mountains, large Russian cities, and stone churches, and the other side is a little bit more small villages, farmlands. And so the book is essentially a love story, but then there's this huge tragedy, and then eventually one of the lovers, Jacob Bach, and again, I don't know what has unraveled, but he ends up raising his daughter by himself, and he tells her fairy tales that he invents. And this is the quote that got me to want to read the book. It says that slowly life in the German colonies along the Volga begin to resemble the stories that he creates. It feels like something that's ready for warm blankets and tea in front of a fire, so I'm in.
Sounds so cozy.
Yes, it does.
Delightful. So my next pick is OK Psyche by Anya Johanna De Niro. I picked this honestly largely because I follow a very small publishing house called Small Beer Press, which is run by Kelly Link and her husband. They published A Stranger in Olandria,
Yes.
and they publish a lot of unique titles that I don't really see elsewhere. I'm always surprised by the books they put out, and this one follows a unnamed trans woman trying to navigate really complicated relationships with her son and her ex. Meanwhile, the world is falling apart. Environmental disasters from the coast are being outsourced to the Midwest. People are starting to engage with companion robots. And I love small stories about everyday people in weird science fiction settings. It's only about 200 pages, so I'm excited to just sit down and read this in a breathless afternoon.
That sounds really interesting. I might have to pick that one up. One that I am excited about reading this fall is The Vaster Wilds by Lauren Groff. That's out on September 12th. Lauren Groff is the author of the book Matrix, which is something that I read a little while ago and truly loved. And this is about a serving girl who escapes a colonial settlement in the Americas into the wilderness. And she's really not prepared for that situation at all. And it follows her as she tries to survive in this environment where she is not well adapted to or suited for, as well as looking at why she is so desperate to get away from the place that she knows. And it is supposed to be a harrowing and kind of brutal story, but I've read Lauren Groff's previous work and I really enjoyed it, so I'm definitely willing to go out on a limb here. People seem to really like it in the early reviews, but this is a reach for me because I don't like the trauma.
Oh, you don't like the I love the trauma.
I know, when you said harrowing, I was like, ooh.
Brutal. Ooh.
Well, my last pick is actually a YA book, and it is another spooky season pick. What Stalks Among Us by Sarah Hollowell, which is out September 12th. This is about two best friends who ditch their end-of-the-year school trip, and instead they're exploring some old forgotten back roads, and they come across a giant abandoned corn maze. And when they get inside the corn maze, they stumble upon corpses that are identical to them in every way.
Incredible.
I love a scary corn maze.
I'm all in on this.
I'm so in.
So I was immediately drawn to this.
They resemble them in certain ways?
In every way.
Oh. Ooh, that's...
And I don't know. I mean, I'm so intrigued by the premise. I lived in Indiana for 4 years, so the idea of unseasonal corn mazes is chilling. It's a very flat place. If there's corn coming up, you're going to notice it's not right. So I already knew this author was from Indiana before I even looked her up. It's like, yeah, that makes sense. It's just like such an irresistible premise, and I'm really excited.
I'm not over the pun yet. What stalks?
Yeah.
Like corn stalks?
Yeah.
Oh, it's so good.
I know.
Perfect with like a big bucket of popcorn kind of read to me.
Yeah. No, you just need like popcorn, maybe a dark and stormy night, and it seems like a lot of fun. So, although I think trauma too.
Yeah, that's a no for me. It feels a little bit like spooky season mixed with like going to your therapist.
And that's what horror is to
That's
me.
what horror is to me. Yeah, I was going to say. The way I get through horror is I'm like, this is so sad. That's how I get through it. I'm like, this is so sad. And then it removes some of the fear.
Well, I'll have to think about that one. But I couldn't read it being alone in the room, I don't think.
That's fair.
Okay, my last recommendation, and I'm so sorry, I'm going to hit the food thing again. But if you're familiar with the Best American series, they do like the Best American short stories, they do the Best American this, they probably do the Best American horror stories. I initially followed the Best Food Writing, which wasn't part of the Best American series. And it was published from, I think, 2000 to 2017. And the reason why I'm recommending is, to finish the story, from 2000 to 2017, it was edited by Holly Hughes, and I used to love it. And I came across so many incredible bits of food writing. There's this one chapter just on bacon that's just like possibly the best literature I've read. Anyway, so in 2018 forward, they moved away from that format, and now they have some incredible culinary / writer take over as editor for just that 1 year. So for example, Ruth Rachel, who wrote Come For Me With Apples, or Gabrielle Hamilton, who wrote, I believe, Blood, Butter, and Bones.
Yep.
And so this fall, it will be edited by Mark Bittman, he's a little bit more of a minimalist guy. But the reason why I'm excited about this fall, because one of the problems I've had is like attention span. So for that night when you just want to relax with a book, but you don't have the energy to get back into a meatier book, I love just picking up and reading one or two short bits about great food.
That's what I love about short story collections as well. I find that it scratches that same itch.
Yes. It's like having a great chocolate instead of a massive porterhouse steak.
Exactly.
So I'm here for the chocolate.
My next recommendation, when we got the call to pick out upcoming releases, I was like, oh no, because I am a children's librarian, which means I am very on the beat of upcoming kids' books. And I had to look at so many lists of upcoming adult books because I forgot every single one that existed. But the one that I'm really excited about from the children's world is Eagle Drums. It's by Nazugrak Rainey Hopkins, who's of the Inupiaq people. And it is a middle grade, so 4th to 6th grade-ish, reimagining of the Inupiaq story of the Messenger Feast. I'm really excited by this book because I think we have a lot of middle grade stories that are supposedly about Indigenous peoples in Alaska and northern Canada by white authors that are extremely inaccurate. And I'm excited to recommend this book for that reason. Also, the story of the Messenger Feast itself was actually banned from being told, and the sacred traditions surrounding it were also banned for a couple centuries. So to see this work come back into the light of day in traditional ownership as well by a new Black person is extremely exciting. I also read the first chapter, and the writing was amazing. And Hopkins is an illustrator, so there's beautiful watercolor landscapes of the Alaskan scenery throughout the book. I recommend it for all ages because I think it's good for everybody to read a middle grade novel now and again. But yeah, that's what I'm really excited about. It releases September 12th as well.
Okay, I guess then it's up to me to kind of round this out with my final pick, which is The Fraud by Zadie Smith. This is a historical fiction novel that revolves around the Tichborne trial, which is an actual trial that happened when a lower-class butcher from Australia claimed that he was, in fact, the missing heir to a vast estate and title. The mother of the missing person met this guy and said, "Yeah, this is my son." The rest of the family said, "No way, what is going on?" England itself was also thinking, "No way, who is this guy? What's going on?"
Wait, I know that story.
And this became basically the Victorian trial of the century.
Mm-hmm.
All of Victorian England was obsessed with this trial. And the story is kind of surrounding that, and two characters, like fictional characters that are surrounding it too. But I'm really just here for an exploration of this weird fictional trial history. That's so fascinating to me. And with Zadie Smith's other works, kind of speaking for that kind of quality, I'm all in on this.
So what are you guys reading next?
All right, so for our season 5 premiere in October, we are reading Our Wives Under the Sea by Julia Armfield, which is going to be a heavy read.
I'm so excited.
Wait, how heavy?
This book is my fault. Deeply traumatizing.
I like when things are your fault. It works out for me.
When I read this book, I made my fiance hold me as I cried when I finished it.
Whoa.
Yes, Sam.
And
So get
they'd
ready.
been planning on reading it. And then the next day, I was like, "Do you want me to keep this? I can just return it to the library, or I can keep it here since you were going to read it." And they were like, "I'm not interested anymore," because it was that sad.
So just a brief synopsis to get everyone excited? Question mark. So Miri thinks that she's gotten her wife back when Leah finally returns from a deep sea mission that ended in catastrophe. It's soon clear, though, that Leah maybe came back wrong. She's not the same person that she was, and whatever happened in that vessel, which is very mysterious, she brought back part of it with her onto dry land.
Wait, like realistic fiction or science fiction?
More speculative.
It's speculative. You don't really know what's going on.
Okay.
A lot of weirdness, kind of spooky, very sad.
Way more metaphor than hard sex.
So, okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, how many blood drops, how many teardrops?
Teardrops, a lot.
Tissue box.
5? This is a 5 teardrop
I'm
book.
thinking based on the situation of 4.
I mean, it really depends on how you feel about this. Because what I love about Our Wives Under the Sea is it's chapter by chapter. You'll have a chapter from Miri's perspective, and you're like devastated with grief. And then the next chapter will happen, and it's what happened in the submarine, and you're terrified. And it's just back and forth like that.
Yeah.
But it's very brief. It's under 250 pages. It's short.
All right.
It's a quick trip to the bottom of the sea.
What could go wrong? Everything. Everything could go wrong.
All right. I will shore myself up for this read.
All right, everyone. That's all the time we've got for this very special episode of the Book Solid podcast.
Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Bye.
Wait, I have something to say.
You have something to say?
I have a surprise.
A surprise?
A surprise?
Yes. It's actually a little bit of an outing and a surprise. So I just wanted to share with everyone. First of all, it's not a very good surprise because you probably smelled it. No? You can't,
No.
You can't smell anything?
No.
What?
I'm so intrigued.
This is bonus content
I
for a
don't
bonus
know
episode.
if this is a metaphor or if you were literally smelling something. Was it?
So I just wanted to share with the audience that when I left the podcast, which was really tragic, and James agreed to come on board,
Oh, no.
there was a price extracted.
There
Yes.
was.
we drew up a contract, I think, on like a napkin
Yeah.
or a paper plate, and he agreed to step in. Lest you thought it was altruism.
Never.
And so, do you remember the cost?
It was Toll House cookies.
Do you remember how many Toll House cookies?
Was it 30?
No.
No, that would have been.
First of all, I was completely aggravated because I like to cook elaborate things, and I tried to talk him into something more interesting than the classic American Toll House cookie, but it sort of fits the theme. So it was 3 dozen Toll House cookies. And guess what I brought today?
Oh
No
my
way.
gosh. 3 dozen.
Oh my
3 dozen
cookies.
Toll House cookies.
Oh my god.
Which is binding to
Oh
you.
my god.
I'm
for yet
booked.
another season.
I'm booked for another
You're
season.
booked for another
Your
season,
book's
Jim. You
solid?
can't get out.
Oh. But no, the reason why I thought you guys could smell it because I literally pulled it out of the oven 5 minutes before I left the house, and I was afraid it would
They do
steam.
seem fresh.
And so I couldn't cover it. None of you guys could smell it. I was stressed that my
Podcast-
secret was out.
Podcast listeners can't see this, but I need you to imagine the most perfect circles of golden brown dough, chunky chocolate chips just emerging enough to make you start salivating.
And you're like, why do you want the Toll House cookies? Come on. And I'm like, this is like
This
a
is what-
dragon's hoard. Right? You could have opened up with gold bars in there. I'd be like,
Yes,
Toll House
same
cookies.
thing.
All right, so, but I believe the outstanding balance has been paid for the upcoming
I
season.
think you're locked in.
Thanks
locked
for
in.
having me back.
Such a
It was
delight.
so great.
No,
to
I was
talk
incredible
to
to have
This
you
was so much
back.
fun.
In case I was terrible, I always bring baked goods so nobody can be angry.
No, it was a delight.
This was really fun. Thank you for having me back.